Unanimously approved their officers to wear body cameras, being the first in the county to do so. Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez has also called for all county police to wear body cameras. The mayor has made the camera plan a centerpiece of his public agenda, but commissioners still need to approve the purchase of the devices in the coming months. Joining me to discuss this and other county news, we welcome Mayor Carlos Jimenez. Mayor, good to see you again.
Good seeing you too, Helen.
The police union is not thrilled about the idea of having to wear county cameras. They say it could be distracting because they have to be activated every time you're going to stop somebody.
Right.
You've been in law enforcement through fire department. Mm-hmm. It can be distracting.
The act of turning it on is as simple as doing that. That's really distracting. I guess I don't think it's any more distracting than putting your car in gear, okay, or actually hitting a brake. And so, no, that's just a red herring. The cameras, I think, are the technologies here. We need to put the cameras on our officers simply to protect good officers. We have a lot of claims against officers that turn out to be bogus, that we take a lot of time investigating. And then there's a cloud hangs over that officer. Again, but in certain instances, you know, the allegations may be correct. Well, what better way to find out what really happened than to have, you know, a camera on the officer himself or herself? When in those departments that already have cameras, the incidence of use of force drops by 60%. The complaints against the police officers drop by 88%. And so, you know, think about what would have happened in Ferguson had that the officer had a body cam. We would have known what really happened versus the officer side of the story and some witnesses side of the story. Some different witnesses saw different things. It's time that we do that. There are other benefits to it. I think it will reduce. You'll have fewer of your people that are arrested, defendants maybe go to court because the evidence is there in black and white, they're caught on videotape. So, you know, we have right now over 50 officers involved in internal affairs. If you have a drastic reduction in the complaints against officers, then you don't need all those officers in internal affairs.
50, that's a big number.
That's a big number, yes it is. Okay, so think about the cost of that. Okay, just the infrastructure that we have to investigate complaints against our officers is huge. And so we can have a dramatic drop in that, then we can put those officers back to work in the street doing something a lot more productive than investigating, reports against officers. We also believe that, it leads to greater transparency and also greater confidence of the public in our police department.
Was this driven by the situation in Ferguson?
No, in fact, 2 years ago, I asked our police director and our deputy police director to go and look for this device, these devices. Did they exist? And to test them out. So 6 months ago, they were tested by the Miami-Dade Police Department, and they've had 3 of those devices, and they tested them, and they have a preference for one set. Which they showed me, and then I could see the obvious advantages of it. But as I told the commission, there's $1 million allocated in the budget to these cameras. It'll outfit 500. My goal is to outfit every patrol officer.
And how many patrol officers are there?
About 1,000. Okay, and so we want to eventually outfit all of our officers with them. There'll be an RFP. It'll be a competitive process, and whoever wins wins. And then before those are implemented, we will have the right policies and procedures in place to safeguard people's privacy and also safeguard the officers in their use, and also the standard operating procedure of when they're to be used. And we want them to be used basically, every time that the officer is responding to a call.
The NAACP is supporting this initiative that you're championing, but there is that call and question of what happens to the person who is stopped by the police officer and the right to privacy, which is a big question that's coming up because it seems to be disappearing. What are the safeguards for those who are concerned about privacy issues?
Well, if you're on the road, there is no expectation of privacy. I mean, outside. The questions are what happens when a police officer goes inside somebody's house, and that happens on occasion. And we'll have procedures in place when that happens. If an individual does not want to be taped, videoed, and there is no presumption of some kind of crime happening in the residence, then the police department is already working on those procedures, how they turn off the camera, and then have basically a witness come to look at the interaction between the police officer and the citizens. And so all those things are being worked out before we put the cameras on our police officers, even though we did do a trial period and we do have some video already, okay, when these devices were being tested by some officers. And in a couple of cases, they were very definitive in terms of being able to solve a problem, solve a question. There was a case of an individual, a double murder. The homicide didn't understand how there were certain stains on one of the victims, and then when they saw the video, they then later found out that fire rescue had actually turned the individuals around, and that's how that happened. So it's a very useful tool for crime solving, but it's also a very useful tool for increasing the confidence of our community in our police department and vice versa.
There's the issue of the budget, and of course you say that you have $1 million already allocated in the budget for these cameras. You also requested a fee hike for transportation, which met initial resistance from commission members because they're trying to help those who are more vulnerable or least able to pay. But there comes a point in time when you feel that a fee hike is necessary.
Right. Well, and that was because, again, our expenses are going to go up, and our transit workers, their concessions are coming back, et cetera, and so, you know, that costs us more. I'm happy to report, though, that we talked to the CITT, the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, about helping in this scenario, in this situation that we have. And just a couple of days ago, we sat down with them. Initially, part of the budget called, we have a memorandum of understanding. It's a maintenance of effort that we have to pay 3.5% more each year from property taxes to the CITT in order to maintain transit services. We want to hold that for a year, abate that for a year, and use that money to buy police officers. But they also have to
pay for additional police
officers. Yeah, because
officers.
it's all general fund. So I could if I don't have to make that payment, then okay, now I can use that money to pay for and maintain, keep, you know, more police officers. Which, by the way, we already announced that none of the police officers are going to be laid off. And so we sat down with them. They were initially resistant to that. Now they've agreed to that, but they also agreed that they had some surplus money that wasn't budgeted at all, that they are now, their executive director and their chairman will take it to the CITT and use that to help offset the 25% increase. So if they approve that, then we won't have to have a 25% increase to the citizens of Miami-Dade. But we know that in 2 or 3 years, in either a year next year or the year after that, the 25% increase will have to come in because, you know, our expenses are still moving up.
No question about it. But when you look at it and you cite the 3.5% increase that happens every year, when you look at the county leave manual and you look at the benefits that county employees have, not all of them make six-figure salaries. That's well understood. Right. But the leave benefits that you make as a county employee, and many of the benefits you get, I've read up to $50 every paycheck just for showing up to work. I mean, that's, you know, if you get to accrue the sick days. Right. If you work 20 years, nobody got sick, and so you accrue all those sick days that you supposedly didn't take, and so on and so forth. You have these increments that, why don't you, which I don't think state employees or federal employees have some of these benefits.
They do, some of them they do.
So why not attack those issues, which are the ones that really weigh down the county budget?
Oh, we attacked them all, but when it comes to negotiations, you know, one of the things that I really wanted was the healthcare redesign, and so when you bargain, you bargain, and so we had 5 unions that were willing to sit down and negotiate, and those unions that were willing to sit down and negotiate, we negotiated in good faith. They adopted or at least they are presenting to their members. We had tentative agreements with 5 of them. 2 of them had already been ratified. that we would, present this new health care plan, which reduced our cost by 15%. That's a $50 million savings to the people of Miami-Dade County. We talked yesterday with the commission about what are we going to do, after this budget, after this contract period, which is 3 years from now. And we're going to be looking at, consolidating all those extras and saying, okay, what is the real base pay? And just make it, that's your base pay, all right, and not all these extras. The reason you have all these things is somehow a convoluted way of trying to get all the employees to be compensated the same way during negotiations. Well, the police got this, well, they got 5%, then how, we need $50, et cetera, et cetera. We need to get away from that. Just roll it into the base. Well, the one good thing, Helen, is we haven't had a cost of living adjustment and won't until the 6th year, and even on the contracts we negotiated for the first time. In the 3rd year, there may be a cost of living adjustment. It's based on the on roll growth. So if Miami-Dade County does well, property values go up, then the employees can share in that. But that means that for 6 years, they will not have a cost of living adjustment. And if you had just anticipated 2% per year, cost of living adjustment, we basically have already just, rolled down the base about 10%. And so we've saved a lot of money that way. We saved a lot of money in the first 3 years. We need to move on as a county. We've had very contentious negotiations, and the relations haven't been good. I'm really not about that. I protect the taxpayers' interest, but I also want good relations with our labor partners. This was a very equitable solution. Mm-hmm. We got what we really needed at the end, and I think that the employees, are happy. At least the leaders are happy with the negotiations. At the end, only if Miami-Dade County does well, then the employees can get a cost of living adjustment. Nothing that will throw our 5-year projections out of whack. And so the good news is, yeah, we had a tough budget year, and we're coming to the end, and we resolved a lot of those issues. But the good news is we have a balanced 5-year forecast based on very conservative estimates. So next year, you're not going to be hearing about layoffs and all these other things. That's all behind us now.
How did you resolve that? Because there was talk about, we were going to need to lay off police officers. There wasn't enough money for the library fund and so on. And at the end of the day, you came up with the money. Well,
the libraries, remember, the commission did vote to raise the millage a little bit, okay? And that funded the libraries, all right? On the other ones where we did not raise the millage, and I did not want to raise taxes, what it was, there were a certain set of circumstances that allowed us to start buying back, and our focus was always on the police. Okay, how do we buy back these officer positions? We started out with 400, but prior to the issuance of the budget, it had gone down to 228. We had a $18 million deal with Miami Beach that we put all to the police department. Subsequent to the release of the budget, and remember, I have to be truthful. And if somebody had checked out my numbers back in July, they would say, wait, this doesn't balance. If I would have said everything's okay, it doesn't balance. And so what do we have? We have a value adjustment board number that we put out. We had an experience of about $30 million above what we had budgeted on refunds to taxpayers. All right, it's their money, that's fine. But it's $30 million. Well, it turned out to be a little bit less, so we took some of that money and said, okay, we had budgeted more for that, okay, we'll put it back to the police. The people that are not represented by a bargaining unit at all, which are, it's bargaining unit L, they respond, I'm responsible for them, I determine what their benefits are, they're going to go into the health care plan. That saved us money. That's going to go buy police officers. That got us down to 110. And then Jackson decided to pull out of our health care plan altogether. That saved us about $4.5 million.
That was huge.
That was huge. And then also the final piece was we were selling our 4 helicopters, our rescue helicopters. We're buying new ones. We're leasing new ones, okay? Much more efficient helicopters. The sale of those helicopters was much higher than we thought. So in other words, Bell Helicopter is going to give us a lot more money for those helicopters than what we thought. So we were able to take that money, put it into a revolving credit account, and we were able to buy the additional police officers. That's why, we're at 0 layoffs for police officers. Now that we have negotiations with and have successful negotiations with some of our labor unions, all the savings that we get from them we're going to be able to go ahead and buy back services that were going to be eliminated because there are savings from these negotiations. And so that's how we got to the budget that we have today. And by the way, tomorrow